The graphics of the upcoming Sword and Shield games have definitely been a major focal point for fans, but in the past week things have gotten especially crazy because of something in particular that has happened that we're going to get into a little bit later in the video. Now, the complaints about the graphics have kind of come in three waves. The first occurred immediately upon the initial reveal of the games, where a smaller group of people expressed their disappointment that the game didn't look Breath of the Wild-esque in quality because that's what they had come to expect of the Switch home console. The second occurred after E3 and the Nintendo Treehouse presentation, in which we saw actual live gameplay of the game for the first time. I'm sure you guys remember this clip that I had shown previously.
Oh, he tried it.
One thing that I've consistently heard since the second wave came about is, oh, people only started complaining about the graphics after they got upset about the National Dex not being in the game. First of all, this just simply is not true. As I said, people were definitely complaining about the graphics right off the bat, although the complaints did intensify after the Treehouse presentation, but there is a reason for this. Now, what I'm about to say is a very, very key point. The reason why people complain so much about the graphics is twofold. First, the live Treehouse gameplay exposed many more graphical issues than we could see in the heavily edited trailers. Second, there is the reasoning for both why the National Pokédex is gone and why many Pokémon won't be transferable to Sword and Shield. If you'll remember, there were two primary reasons that Masuda gave for this: to balance the battle system, and because GameFreak is creating the games with much higher fidelity with higher quality animations. Now, the battling system can obviously be balanced without deleting people's favorite Pokemon from existence, such as by just not allowing the unbalanced Pokemon to be used in certain online battling playlists, but still allowing those Pokemon to continue existing and being used in the game itself. So that means that the primary reason was that it was just too much work given that GameFreak was focused so heavily on these higher fidelity games with higher quality animations, and adding all the Pokemon in would have taken too much time and or resources. Naturally, then, fans said, okay, well, the National Dex and some of my favorite Pokemon will be gone at the expense of having time to thoroughly develop higher quality graphics and animations. Well, let's go back and take a look at these graphics and animations. And upon reflection, they see this. On the whole, fans are not upset about the graphics merely because they're lashing out and nitpicking due to anger about the National Dex. They're upset about the graphics because they see numerous problems, which we'll get into, despite them having been used as the justification for not having the National Dex, and many of the Pokemon in the games. And that is a very important distinction to be made. Now, an extension of this second wave has occurred that I would argue is a third wave of complaints all on its own, and it's a response to a singular tweet that sparked massive debate across the Pokemon community. The tweet was initially posted on July 12th by Twitter user Xenochu, and I believe that it has been since taken down, but not before it received thousands upon thousands of likes and retweets. The tweet reads as follows. Okay, so it turns out the Pokemon models are not actually reused from the 3DS, they're actually new models. They look similar because I imagine they were recreated to look the same, but they are actually new, so that explains a lot. When I first saw this tweet, I was super curious as to what they were talking about, so I opened up the picture that was attached. Turns out it was referencing a Reddit post that says, when they switched over from the 3DS to Nintendo Switch, the frame rates and quality were both different. In this article, they reveal that when they went to transfer models and keep animations into Sword and Shield, they didn't transfer over right, forcing them to rebuild them by scratch. Keep in mind, GameFreak only has 143 employees, only half of which are working on Pokemon, the other half on town. So basically, while the same animations of Pokemon themselves are copied and pasted, most, if not all, Pokemon models had to be redone. On top of that issue, Dynamaxing forces GameFreak to produce extra models for each and every Pokemon, because you just can't take the same model and increase its size by 10 and expect it to look half decent. I seriously wish that GameFreak had repeated this information in their response. This Reddit post itself was comprised of paraphrased and sometimes fabricated statements taken from a Nintendo Everything article, which itself was a summary of an original Famitsu interview with Omori and Masuda. So before we dissect this all and check the accuracy, let me just put this into perspective. The tweet that everyone's using as an excuse for the lack of National Dex was a summary of a Reddit post, which was a summary of a Nintendo Everything article, which itself was a summary of the interview. A summary of a summary of a summary of a Famitsu article. Surely there isn't any misinformation in it, right? Wrong. First of all, I would just like to dispel the notion that this is new, sudden information. This interview is from June 13th at the E3 event itself. Second, the interview itself states nowhere that the 3DS animations and models didn't transfer over to the Switch correctly. Thirdly, GameFreak is indeed divided into two development teams. Team 1, which is working on the Gear project, including Town, which is actually the team that has priority within the company, according to Inoue, which I've talked about in a previous video, and Team 2 is dedicated to Pokémon. We don't know the sizes of these teams, however, so saying half and half is a guess at best. However, in the Reddit post, this is portrayed as an excuse as to why the National Dex isn't in the game, when it is in fact the problem itself. With the full power of GameFreak, this would have most certainly been possible, as it was in X and Y when they made over 721 models plus forms essentially from scratch. Fourth, we don't know if Dynamaxing requires entirely new models. Some people in animation say that they likely would, but that they can also possibly be scaled. But even if they do, again, this is not an excuse. This is a problem. It would mean Dynamaxing took priority over completing the National Dex. Now finally, the big point. This post claims that all of the Pokemon models had to be done from scratch, and that is why they don't have enough time to include all of the Pokemon. There was huge debate on Twitter over whether this part of the interview was translated from Japanese correctly because it seems so absurd. I personally had my girlfriend reach out to one of her friends who lives in Japan who is fluent in both English and Japanese, and we had her translate that part of the article. She said that she understood it as meaning that the new Switch hardware requires the model of the game to be built from scratch. Granted, she is not familiar with game development and is not a huge Pokemon fan, so who knows, these kinds of conceptualizations could be foreign to her. I say this because Joe Merrick of Cerebi came out saying that his professional translator reportedly agreed that it meant the individual models of the Pokemon themselves were done from scratch. However, Joe maintains that the reasons for this are unknown, and it's currently unknown if this is the case for all of the Pokemon or just some. Additionally, there's the possibility that Famitsu transcribers very well could have just miswritten Omori's words down with some slight error that could change the meaning entirely. However, we have definitely seen the exact same animations used from the 3DS and Sword and Shield for the Switch, such as for characters, Pokemon models, and for some Pokemon move animations. Additionally, there have been several analyses by reputable graphic designers and animators showing that the models themselves, in terms of polys and vertexes, are identical, and that the only thing different is the textures and shading. From what I understand, this level of similarity would be nearly impossible to accomplish without bringing forth the older models to use as a foundation. Besides, if they truly did have to make them from scratch, why would they make them the exact same? Wouldn't they update and upgrade them for a new home console instead of having straight lines and points in Gyarados' whiskers? And even if they did just copy the style of the old models, is that really from scratch since you have a complete base to work off of and just imitate? We've also seen these models in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee too. Did they have to remake all of them there? We never heard anything about that. What about the 4 full generations worth of models that are present in Pokemon Go? Furthermore, would the failure to reuse and upgrade past models demonstrate incompetency on GameFreak's behalf? By all accounts, it would seem that this statement by Omori was either a miswriting by the Famitsu transcribers, or he merely misspoke or exaggerated, which is very possible when you're improvising in casual conversation. It's also interesting that neither Masuda nor Omori have repeated this kind of answer since June 13th, even though they've addressed fan concerns and other media about the same problem a few times. Apparently, without actually data mining the game itself, which won't be possible until it's either leaked or it releases, we won't be able to absolutely confirm either way, but it does seem quite suspect indeed, both logically and in terms of what numerous graphic designers have pointed out. The premature and often immature celebrations by some Poketubers as to the translation being correct means little to nothing. The transcribers could have easily gotten it wrong, people can misspeak, exaggerate, or even lie to save face, which I'm not saying was done here, but it remains a possibility nonetheless, and until we have absolute confirmation, nothing is certain. But the evidence sure does seem to stack against them having been made by scratch, and much of the other content of the sources that these people were obtaining this from were false to promote a certain viewpoint. And this goes for everyone. Be careful not to believe things too quickly to promote your side of the debate. People are of course going to want to spread misinformation to appeal to one's confirmation bias. The fact remains though, even if this from scratch models situation was the case, the division of labor between Pokemon and Town within GameFreak and the failure to prioritize Pokemon is what causes this to be a problem in the first place, because without it, the models would surely be done without having to delete many fans' favorite aspects of the game. Anyway, there we go everyone, an analysis of the graphics situation with Pokemon Sword and Shield. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you're the first to see new videos and so you don't miss future uploads. Make sure to also let me know what you think about the Sword and Shield graphics. Before we go, I do want to give a quick plug to my Twitter page where I talk about my thoughts and keep you guys updated on video progress, and my Discord server where we've got an awesome Pokemon community that loves to chat all about these topics. If you're interested in joining along with either one, the links will be in the description below, so make sure to check them out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching everyone, this has been Sylph Spectre, and I'll see you guys next time for some more Pokemon content.